Hi, and we are live today with a very special Earth Week episode of the Operator Series. We're sitting down with two brands utilizing a game-changing approach to carbon neutrality and zero emission fulfillment, or should I say carbon offsetting fulfillment. Today we are joined by Blue Lagoon Skincare, a brand that has been on over 25 years in the making, with a secret ingredient that's created through a unique geothermal process. It's harvested at a special research laboratory in Iceland, and it uses carbon dioxide throughout the process, both in offsetting and also using it for product development. We also have Herbally, a wellness company that produces a range of tea blends and essential oils designed to support healthy blood sugar levels. Herbally is also extremely committed to sustainability, and it plays an impact in every decision they make, from their ingredients down to their packaging. What do these two brands have in common? Well, they're both use our latest integration, carbon offsetting via Pashama. We also have David here from Pashama, which is a mission-driven company with the aim of restoring nature to help climate change. So what does that mean? Pashama works with a range of businesses, from e-commerce brands to technology companies like Shopify, to help distinguish what your actual carbon footprint looks like, and allows you to offset that using a portfolio of forest regeneration and deforestation prevention projects. So with that introduction, I'm going to kick it off to our CMO, Casey, and our host of the show. And if you have any questions, please don't forget to drop them in our questions tab. And to start things off, just let us know where you're tuning in from.
Yes, Gina, thank you very much. Like Gina mentioned, we're really excited with Earth Week and our partnership announcement with Pashama, and having both Blue Lagoon and Herbally taking part of that. And so what we're doing is we're trying to make our entire fulfillment network carbon neutral through the offsets. And then there are brands such as both of these utilizing our Pashama integration. So very exciting. As Gina mentioned, drop in the comments where you're, whichever direction that is, where you are calling in from. I know we always have people calling in from all over the world, and we actually have some of our guests today that are outside of the US as well. And so real quick on who we have here, we have Fanar, who's the Environmental and Quality Manager over at Blue Lagoon, sitting next to Signe, who's the Sales and Business Development Leader at Blue Lagoon. I was telling them before, it's really nice to see people actually sitting next to each other as the world opens up a little bit more, and that becomes a normal thing again. Yeah. And then we have Michael, who's the co-founder and managing director at Herbally, and then David, who is who's the partnership lead over at Pashama, and has just been great to work with us over at ShipBob. We're just really excited about everything today. And so let's see, come on, people in the chat. So we've got people from Chicago, as always. We have Calgary, there we go, representing international. And so Fanar and Signe, where are you guys calling in from today?
Well, we are calling in from Iceland. So it's quite the northern, far away from the US.
We are located at the Research and Development Center here at the Blue Lagoon, and we are located at an 800-year-old lava field, which is quite close to the fairly new eruption of a very small volcano here nearby.
Must keep things nice and interesting.
Tiny volcanic eruption, but extremely incredible to watch. Actually,
I bet it is. I should grab my 6-year-old. He'll want to see that kind of stuff. And then Michael, where are you calling in from?
So we're in Montreal, Canada. So today we have quite a snowstorm today. When I heard Blue Lagoon story, I'm like, that's extremely exciting. And now there's volcanoes erupting nearby. I'm like, hey, it's hard to stop the story. It's hard to stop the stories, but we do have a nice snowfall today here in Montreal.
Nice. And David, what about you?
Yeah, I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge I saw all of the volcano eruptions. It was blowing up my Instagram, and it's so cool now with everyone having drones that they can just, all the user-generated content of it was, especially at night, was really, really cool. I am calling in from San Francisco.
Perfect. And I'm just south of you. I'm down in Southern California. So before we get into sustainability and the carbon neutrality and everything like that, I want to start off just with, understanding some of the backstories of your companies. And so, either Fana or Signe, Blue Lagoon, it's been, 30 years in the making. What was the catalyst behind taking Blue Lagoon online?
Well, actually, we've been, our first product came out in 1995, and we've been selling online for almost 20 years now. But we, of course, our drivers are our customers that come to the spa and experience the lagoon by themselves and the products, of course. So we have through 3 distinct product lines that we offer our customers. That it is our unique spa line. This is how our guests can experience the wonders of the Blue Lagoon at home. We of course have the dermatological line as well, and now we've just recently launched BL Plus, a new brand with a focus on anti-aging skincare and face products. So it's we are very excited about that.
Yeah.
And of course, most importantly, we feel the healing power of the lagoon is so magnificent, and the ingredients in the water, and we feel kind of responsible and just sharing it with the world. So that's one of our key drivers, and we've been emphasizing that even more. Started in the beginning of last year, and then of course the pandemic hit us, and everybody started to focus online. But this is our main focus now, with increasing and deliver our products worldwide.
Nice, that's great. And so, and I see some people in the comments have actually been to the Blue Lagoon, so that's cool.
Great.
Always welcome back.
Yeah.
With launching the site online, over 25 years ago, obviously a lot's evolved in the e-commerce space. So I don't know when you guys got involved in, with the product line and going online, but what were you all using maybe earlier in the process, and what are you using today, maybe from like an e-commerce platform or from a technology perspective?
Well, unfortunately, I can't tell you much about the platform we did used to use, as I wasn't working here at that moment. But still, it was kind of simple. We started domestically, but expanded very soon internationally. And of course, we also wanted to, as we focus on our core business and product development, we wanted the best to serve or to come in with their shipping and fulfillment expertise. So that was very important to us. Also, when we looked at the beginning of this year, when we started to expand, we wanted the best partners, and that's of course where ShipUp came in. So it's been really, really good to work with you guys.
Nice. Well, thank you. And I want to go deeper into expanding internationally in a second, but you guys are based in Iceland. Are a majority of your customers in Iceland? Are they in Europe? Are they in North America? Are they in the US? Where are a majority of your customers?
Well, a majority of our customers are actually in the US, and also in the United Kingdom and Germany. We deliver all over the world, but basically it's US is our largest market.
Okay, interesting. And then Michael, if we jump over to you, because again, you're based in North America, but not in the US. And so I want to, understand a little bit more about domestic versus international, what that looks like for you. But tell us a little bit, what was the catalyst for Herbally?
Yeah, so we're 3 partners. So there was Joe and Daniel. So they're more from an online first world. So performance marketing, they have an agency and the likes, and they started getting, a lot of requests for more natural blood sugar products. So in that, they were looking for a partner, and I came about, and I come from a background, from a manufacturing background with parents that were very nature product focused. It wasn't that they were health seekers. It just came naturally to them to, everything was cooked on the spot. It was just very rarely branded items, and that sort of world. So my parents were already, putting together herbs for blood pressure. It was a common thing in the house, to collect wild herbs and that sort of thing for themselves. So when we partnered up, we realized it's a perfect fit, and we created a blood sugar tea. So that's still our main product is a blood sugar tea. We did have the pros, or I guess the benefit of having that performance marketing background from Joe and Dan, and then from my side, it was more the manufacturing, the logistics, the supply chain, and the rest.
Great. And I remember reading about Herbally a while ago, and it seemed like you guys wanted to get started as fast as possible. Of course, getting feedback from your customers to figure out what to actually create and how to evolve that. But you guys were pretty surprised at how much people loved the product and the uptick. And so it seems like you guys jumped on the the roller coaster pretty quickly. So yeah, tell us about that.
I mean, from my background, I would have suggested a lot more market research, a lot more product testing. But they had some initial thoughts that, blood sugar natural products were really in request or in demand. So we were very surprised, or I guess fortunate to say, okay, well, this is working. This is the early data proved successful, and the feedback was good. And we've had a few iterations to the product so far, but not as normally, I guess, as I would normally expect from a new product launch.
And then for you guys are in North America, but based in Canada. Where's the majority of your customers based?
I'd say 95% US.
Okay.
Yeah. We're sort of like Blue Lagoon in the sense where we're looking to expand internationally with ShipBop. And I know you wanted to touch base on that later, but we see a lot of benefit in leveraging your expansion and just growing with you side by side.
That's great. And then we'll throw it back to Blue Lagoon after this. But as you think through going internationally, because I think that's something that a lot of companies like ShipBob, and there's companies like Shopify through their platform, or companies like Stripe through their payments gateway, is really kind of shrinking the world so it's easier to sell or to market and then transact and then to ship internationally. So what was your process? Like you said, you're more from the operations background, so you're pretty methodical about it. Like, how have you guys thought about going from a brand that's maybe primarily in North America and then starting to spread overseas?
Yeah, so ShipBop has really facilitated this whole process in our planning. From a product perspective, we're really looking at it in terms of languages. So Europe is maybe the more complex in terms of packaging, in terms of so many languages, so many countries. So we do have an inventory system that works with ShipBop that we're hoping will facilitate, shipping the right product to the right consumer in the right language. In terms of a supply chain, again, so we're looking for manufacturers in each country or as close to as possible. So we're not looking to work with our US suppliers for the European market. And the main reason for that, besides freight duties and the rest, is also a sustainable objective of everybody wants to buy local. Made in USA works very well for us in the US. It's packaged in USA, it's blended in USA. Some of the ingredients that could be are sourced in USA. And we hope to do the same thing in Europe, in Australia, and in the other countries. So just recreating that full supply chain in those countries individually.
Nice. And you mentioned sustainability, and we'll get to that in a second and bring in David for that as well. But, Signe and Fanar, like, if you could share us a little bit about how you have thought about going international. I know before you guys were talking, briefly in like Icelandic, but you obviously speak English really well. I've helped run an international D2C brand as well, where we had to be we were headquartered in Germany, and so the site was in German, and then the next iteration of the site was also in English. And then as we thought of how we'd expand, we actually started targeting like the Nordics, where we felt like we didn't have to translate it into the local language because English is rather dominant. Same it seems like in Iceland as well. So just really curious how you've thought about, again, going overseas. Going in North America might be easier because there's a big market and it's all English speaking, but you guys are in Europe, and so how you've thought, gone after, let's say, Germany or France or Spain or countries like that as well.
Yeah, of course, the language part is a complicated issue, but we decided to, we have our products in English and we focus on just keeping them in English language. So at least for now, this is why, and of course, one of our key drivers are, our customers, those that come here and experience the spa and the lagoon, and they really, long for the product to be available. So they are, our best, spokespersons, as always. So they are. This is how we, felt the increase in demand.
And that is how it actually started. We were getting guests that really wanted to experience this experience further. So taking some products home with them and trying it on and seeing how it increase your wellness. So and those customers actually wanted to buy then more. And not everyone can always come to Iceland fairly easily, especially during this pandemic. So we felt that, okay, we need to expand this to our customers anywhere in the world so they can enjoy the wellness of this Blue Lagoon experience, which as was we're talking about this.
How it all started.
Yeah, we've been researching this phenomenon for over 30 years, and now we have peaked at the right product that I think will. Our customers can fairly enjoy the Blue Lagoon experience at home.
I'm curious if you have any examples of how you've been able to, I guess through digital mediums, try to like transmit the experience of actually being there. Because I'm not surprised people go there; it's a magical experience. They want to hold on to that, for as long as possible after they leave. I think about this a lot with, there's like. Perfume or cologne brands. It's like, you go into like a department store, you can actually like smell what you like and don't like, but that's hard to transmit online. So, with Blue Lagoon, how have you guys maybe gone about that, trying to give them that experience and shared like the benefits of, your products?
Well, it comes down to the ingredients in the products. Like was mentioned before, one of our core products are silica mud mask, which comes directly from the lagoon, and then of course as well the algae. So, and you can, you feel and you smell the ingredients, and that's how you actually bring it back home. And then of course the salt that we make here at the facility. So this is a key factor.
And as Sydney said before, our consumers or the guests that come to the Blue Lagoon are actually the best. The ones that can spread the word, and we have actually designed all our facilities in a way that we have these moments during the customer journey where you're going through the lava field into the building and experiencing it all
nature firsthand.
Nature firsthand, and actually all our buildings and everything is designed into the environment. So it's a very unique, fantastic experience, and we have these moments that our guests can take, some pictures and selfies and spread that around, because that is also a part of the experience. Because we want as consumers to let our friends and family know what we are experiencing, and we also actually have in the lagoon itself we have greeters that actually have cameras and take pictures for our guests and send them to them, so they can then send it forward to any social media that they want. So, and that's worked fairly well for us.
That's great. And you mentioned, again, we've talked about sustainability and being environmentally conscious. At Blue Lagoon, maybe from like with our announcement today, from like a fulfillment and supply chain perspective, how have you gone after, let's say, carbon neutrality or being as sustainable as possible, up to today, and how do you see that evolving over time?
So Blue Lagoon is actually based on sustainability, because we originated from a geothermal power plant that is located close to us, and this is based on green energy. Capturing very hot water from almost 2 kilometers from the earth, and from that water is the geothermal seawater, which is most of our products are based from, and this is what makes the Blue Lagoon blue. Really, it's part of the experience here. And what we have done with the skincare is take some of these key ingredients from the geothermal seawater and produce like silica, algae, salt, And also we have lava that is coming from the neighboring area here, which we use in our lava scrub. And this is also key in like circular economy when you're looking into like reusing resources, because Blue Lagoon is actually reusing this resource after the energy they have captured the energy from it. And actually after we've taken like the silica from the geothermal seawater, we use that water then going into our algae cultivation tanks to cultivate the algae. And another thing that we do actually, that we take CO2 gas coming from that boreholes that produce this energy, and we capture that and use that to feed the algae in the tanks as well. So we are continuously always circulating, reusing the resources, and capturing the CO2 with the growth of the algae. And we have shown through many years of research that this algae has a very good effect on your skin and anti-aging effects and so on. And this is sort of the core of what Blue Lagoon is. We are located at a resource park, which is also named UNESCO Geopark here. So we are always preserving the environment, but still fully utilizing the resources that they provide.
That's great. And you mentioned circular economy, and that's something that I probably should know more about. I was actually talking to a founder late last week, and he and his co-founder, they kept mentioning, circular economy and how they thought about like resale. And I was like, is that a term that people actually use, or is this just, you putting some fancy spin on it? And he's like, no, it's very common. So if you could just, for everybody listening, explain, circular economy a little bit.
Yeah. So the word circular economy is actually, like you're saying, it's a new topic that is maybe coming more into discussion now than before, but it's fairly old, and it's actually although we have been working in this circular economy way, we really didn't have a word on it, but now this is circular economy actually. So circular economy is really just taking resources and reusing them as efficiently as possible, and then reusing as much as often as you can. So you're always circulating products, circulating packaging, materials, finding new life for it. So it's really basically it's a world without waste. We're trying to take the waste out of the equation and finding new ways to use materials.
That's great. I'm glad you mentioned that. And again, it's funny, when I asked him, he's like, no, you're going to start hearing about this a lot more. Right. This is the power of also naming things. And so, he's based in San Francisco. You guys are obviously in Iceland, using like the same terminology to talk about it. So definitely something for all of us to keep an eye on. Mm-hmm. And then, David, we're going to get you in one sec, but Michael, what about with you all? How have you all approached, being as sustainable within your supply chain, and how's that maybe evolved more recently, and maybe talk us through your decision to work with Pachama as well.
Right. So, I mean, Herbally as a start was sort of a new, as we scaled, it became more and more of an important factor for us. We started looking into biodegradable packaging, the type of tea bags we use, and then obviously the shipping. So we're trying to create sort of a full cycle, not in the sense of circular economy, but in the sense of when you buy a product from us, it's good for your health, it's good for the planet, and we give back to the community as well. So in our rebranding that we're going through, those are the three pillars we're trying to build upon. But in terms of packaging, so a lot of research has came about in the last year. It's really a steep learning curve. New materials like OXO biodegradable are being now banned in many countries, and now you have PLA, and then you have Omni biodegradable by other companies. So it's definitely been a deep dive into learning. As of now, our tea bags themselves are compostable, but even then, we're thinking about switching now to a cotton tea bag altogether. It's an added step, but now it's hand stitched. We think it could add a lot of value, and the reason for that is simple. It seems like we're forever chasing the best materials, because there's just new development, just like technology, there's new development coming out all the time. So The issue is we're lucky in Montreal that we barely have a garbage disposal in our house, or we barely make use of it. It's really compost or recycling, and it's one of the two. But that's not true for everywhere we sell to, and sometimes compost is not even an option. And in that case, the question is a compostable material actually doing more harm than good if it is not composted? So that's sort of been the challenge for us in learning. I feel like we're learning all kinds along the way, but when we came to Pachama, so we presented a solution, I think, to Shibop about maybe 6 months to a year ago, and Shibop presented us to Pachama and how we're working with this new solution, and we loved it from the bat. It was traceable, it was accountable, it was easy to integrate, and it met all the factors. So we're like, this is a no-brainer. At least it seems less complex than the packaging that we're diving into. So we were very happy to jump on board with that.
Nice. I like that. I know that's one of the things that they focused on and we focused on a lot, is just making it easy for the brands and for the end consumers. And so David, how about if you could jump in, explain in your words, what is Pachama, and give us a little bit of the backstory on like why Pachama came into existence.
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, it's so wonderful to hear about, talking about circular economy and packaging, because when it comes to sustainability, there are so many different ways to be addressing it. And, the idea of carbon offsetting, it's not supposed to be a sin tax. It's not supposed to be an excuse to continue business operations as usual, right? And then just offset it away. Ideally, every company is measuring their impact, figuring out ways to reduce the impact. Now, that being said, there's just a pragmatic carbon cost to running any business. The five of us right now on this live storm, the amount of data it takes to power this, the internet, right? There's a carbon footprint to this, right? E-commerce has added so much to our daily lives, both from a business perspective as well as us as individual consumers. That being said, right, there are emissions that we can avoid. And so the idea with offsets really is, how can we help businesses, right, negate that impact, that footprint that they can't, that's unavoidable, right? How do we help them support projects that are ideally sequestering carbon? What I always like to start with, our mission at Pachama is to restore nature. How we are going about that is we are developing technology to address the forest carbon market. When it comes to carbon offsets, there's all sorts of different schemes out there. We focus exclusively on nature-based solutions and forests. When it comes to forests, trees are the oldest technology in the world for sequestering carbon. They are also one of the most scalable and efficient mechanisms for sequestering carbon. But more than just carbon, right? A carbon credit, a carbon offset, it's a financial instrument, right? It enables companies to measure, right, what their impact is on one side, and it enables them to communicate with different types of projects all over the world in the same way a dollar bill or a euro, right, currency does. And so when it comes to forest and why we focus exclusively on forestry right now, there are so many co-benefits that go beyond just the price of carbon to conserving and restoring forests, from biodiversity habitat corridors, supporting local indigenous communities, clean water, cooler temperatures, right? The list goes on. So that being said, when this company was founded, it was looking at this intersection of what holes were there in the market between existing, ecosystems in place, right, to restore nature, and what technologies have been developed. And what we came across was, when it came to the forest carbon market, super thorough, super well-intentioned industry, not really backed in technology. Not to go too far down the rabbit hole, but the process for getting new projects off the ground literally involves sending people out to these really remote forests around the world to manually count and measure trees. Costs 6 figures every time just to do the auditing. Because of that, it's really hard to scale these projects, and these projects only get audited every 5-7 years. A lot can happen. You look at countries like in Brazil, and the Amazon, new president takes over a couple of years ago, political winds change, deforestation rates spike. Really hard to monitor these projects to ensure that they're actually doing what they're supposed to be doing. So that was really where Pachama was born from, was right mission to restore nature, and how can we kind of use Silicon Valley technology, AI, machine learning, right, venture to create a system that will really improve this market, to A, get more funds going towards these types of forestry projects, and B, start to develop tools so that we can start to originate and get new forestry projects off the ground, so we can really start to scale, right, forest restoration around the world.
So you mentioned restoration a few times and getting new projects off the ground, but there's reforestation and then there's avoided deforestation projects. And so if you could explain what's the difference between those and which you guys focus on today and why?
Yeah, so we focus on, there's actually a third project as well, which is third type of project, improved forest management. So we focus on all three. The general high level idea for any forest carbon project is a project generates carbon credits based on this net delta over, say, the next 40 years. Because this project exists, this landmass will be able to sequester X amount of tons of carbon. If this project didn't exist, it would only be able to sequester Y, right? And that additional, like that delta, is what they generate credits for. Now, if you're planting trees, it's kind of, right, it's a little bit more obvious to see as you plant a tree and as they continue to grow, they sequester more carbon, right? It's like the Y is 0 and the X is just up. If you're talking about an avoided deforestation, we're looking at in areas like the Amazon, Indonesia, Africa, right, where there's really high deforestation rates. And part of the funds for these projects go towards actually hiring human patrols and resources to deal with, many of these areas deal with armed tree poachers. They also go towards working with local communities to create modern agroforestry practices. One project we work with built a Brazil nut processing facility so that the locals can start working with the land, right, to improve their economics from working with the land as opposed to having to cut the money down for timber. So that would be what an avoided deforestation project is you're taking, right, and that's part of what Pachama does when we take an avoided deforestation project. We can pull satellite data imagery dating back to the 80s. We can look at a project that's, say, 20,000 hectares and look at 1 million hectares right in the surrounding area. And we can see, was this area actually at risk of deforestation? Is this project justified, right, to make sure that there is this what's considered additionality, right? And additionality is but for this project existing, would this carbon otherwise be sequestered? So that's kind of the difference between reforestation versus avoided deforestation. There's no right or wrong answer, right, between the two. It's more an issue of quality versus non-quality. Are these projects doing what they're supposed to be doing? And there's all sorts of considerations that go into it. There's a lot of momentum now towards what's called carbon removal, which is planting trees, and this idea of, right, you're planting an initial tree, it's growing, sequestering more carbon. There's a lot of issues around that, though, that go, if we're just looking at carbon as the only metric, we're kind of missing the bigger picture here. So there's a lot of these like tree plantations, pine, eucalyptus, that sure, these trees can grow very consistently, and but we're growing trees like crops, and you're creating biodiversity jungles in doing this. That's kind of missing the point of restoring nature. And so I think both are equally important in very different ways. As long as we're still seeing these crazy rates of deforestation in areas like Alaska and the Amazon and Indonesia, right, these projects are equally as important, and unfortunately are losing a little bit of momentum right now.
And this is actually the reason why we chose Pachama, and that they have it certified and can guarantee that we are actually they're actually capturing that carbon. And I agree with you as well, David, that you're talking about we are not just buying ourselves out of the buying us a solution for this, because the companies still have to calculate their emissions, go to projects to reduce their emissions as much as they can, but still you're left with some emissions, and you have to account for that. So carbon offsetting through companies like Pachama is very, very good, and also it puts a dollar figure on the emissions itself, which is also then a driving force for companies to go into more extensive projects or expensive projects to reduce the emissions. So putting a price on the carbon really helps in that aspect as well.
I'm glad you brought up the price, because that's something I want to dive into in a second as well. But maybe either Signy or Fanar or maybe David, like talk through. So an order comes in, I buy your product. During the checkout process, what is actually happening to maybe calculate what is needed, for that dollar amount for the carbon offset? You guys are looking at the actual product, the dimensional weight, how far it's traveling, like what goes into that process, and what happens like with the customer experience?
So regarding the calculation of the emissions, we are looking at 3 different scopes. So usually talking about scope 1, 2, and 3, and like scope 1, then you're looking at the fuel consumption of the company. So what we actually carbon neutralize all our production here at the Blue Lagoon, and we actually wanted to go further in that aspect, that we wanted our customers to be able to buy our products anywhere in the world and get it carbon neutral. And that's why we went into this project with Pajama. And but what we actually do, we calculate or measure the consumption of fuel that we use, like the buses that we use to transport our guests to and from the Blue Lagoon. We offset that. We offset any fuel consumption of the staff buses and the company cars. For scope 2, it's energy and heat. So we are very lucky to have a green energy power plant, and so we get the electricity and heat at a very low carbon rate, but still we calculate that as well and carbon neutralize it. And then we go into scope 3, and that's always how far are you going to reach, really. So what we actually do here, we carbon offset any business flights that are related to our employees. We carbon offset waste management of all the waste that is coming from the facility, and now we are looking into the transportation, really.
Yeah, absolutely from the beginning, from the production side to the main location, to which market we are actually, or to the warehouse, and then to the customer. So it's all the way.
In a perfect world, we would be able to buy all these services carbon offsetted. That we would really like that. If there's a company providing this service or these product carbon offset, we would choose that. So it really goes to the companies and to the consumer that we should be, by buying products that are carbon offsetted, you're pushing onto companies to carbon offset their products and choosing services that are carbon offsets.
So talk me through the customer experience. So do you guys promote the fact that you're doing this on the website when I'm going through like the checkout process? Is this part of it? Does this cost the end consumer additional money if they want to round up, or are they notified? Like what does that customer experience look like?
It doesn't really cost the customer anything. This is what we will do ourselves, but of course we will introduce it to them, and we have it on our official website, thebluelagoon.com, and we talk about our missions. So it's and then we are just as we are quite recent with Pajama, we are working on just introducing what we are doing with them on our Blue Lagoon skincare website.
Yeah, and the amazing thing about this really is that this doesn't really cost that much. No. And this is one of the global issues in the world, that we are facing climate change, and we can easily do so much to improve this, and starting by at least calculating our emissions, choosing to go carbon offsetting, and then working continuously to reduce our emissions is the only way forward, really, to tackle this huge climate change. And it doesn't really. I think any company can do this, really, big or small, really.
100%. I'm just gonna add to that. We're a 2-year-old company, right? And when we started entertaining all this, it seemed very complex before Pajama. There was a lot of complexities, but we were still sort of learning all about it, right? And learning how to apply it. And now that we have Pajama, we're like, okay, well, this is perfect. We can easily turn our attention to everything else you mentioned: our supply chain, our manufacturers, and everywhere else we want, by saving lots of time for Pajama. And even once we do figure out, every other, I guess, leg of the supply chain, it's still going to be easy to offset those carbon credits, the carbon with Pajama.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. My thing to add in here, and I think both brands kind of touched upon this, is right. There's different scopes and different levels that you can go into in terms of, and I think it can be overwhelming especially when you're talking about producing a physical product to go from 0 to carbon neutral. Right. And so there are different aspects of your business. Pachama admittedly is much more focused on measuring forests and providing the highest quality offsets than measuring necessarily companies' footprints. And there are self-reporting tools we can recommend. There's other partners we work with that work more on complex supply chains. But that being said, right, there are certain, part of the integration that we did, Casey, with ShipBob is we're focused with the ShipBob API specifically on shipping, right? And that takes into account, there's coefficients from the EPA that take into account the size of the package, I should say the weight of the package, the type, method of transportation, and the distance traveled. And that's something, as long as, as I mentioned before, every company should be measuring and reducing, right, and figuring out their supply chain. But regardless of what you do with that, as long as you're shipping via e-commerce, right, that's not something, right, that you can reduce today. Yeah. So, and that is also, again, easily measurable and super, super cheap. I think it comes out to, we measured with your team, I think it's like 0.005 cents per order on average, right, to do this. And so, right, this is an easy way for brands to get started, right, in terms of messaging their companies. Not saying that this is necessarily a carbon neutral product, but at least the shipping is carbon neutral, right? And then as you kind of continue your development, right, in the product, right, you can start taking into account, right, what we did with ShipBob as separate from the API integration, right, is measuring all of the warehouse energy. We work with one company that does yoga pants, and they did a self-reporting based on the materials they use. And they figured out, okay, if one pair of yoga pants equals an estimate of half a ton of carbon, they sell 300 1 month. They place an order with me for 150 tons, right? And they are offsetting and marketing around that specific product. So there's many different ways and different kind of levels that you can be addressing, right, your carbon footprint.
Interesting. I'm glad you broke that down. And yeah, that was what was important to us, is that we can't just do it on the shipping side. We have to do it within our fulfillment network as well. And then people could start thinking through, and as we think of expanding it, higher up in the supply chain as well. Michael, with you and Herbally, do you pass this? Do you eat this cost? Do the customers have to pay it? Do they see it at the checkout? What is that customer?
As of right now, we eat the cost, and it's not visible anywhere. We do hope to sort of rebrand a bit by the end of the year. So we're going with a new site, some new packaging features, and we do hope to add more into that, that 3-pillar process we're talking about of, the planet, your health, and the community. And in doing so, we'll probably have it more visible on our site. And I think it's good to promote it. I think it creates awareness. And like we were saying, some municipalities, still don't have composting options. They still don't have all the necessities for the consumer to actually be sustainable himself or help him be sustainable. So in creating awareness however we can and pushing for these initiatives, I think we'll get to our goals faster.
So a question I have to ask, because it is, per order, let's say the total is relatively nominal, right, but it's still a cost, and that can add up. And as your business continues to have more success, and as your business continues to expand internationally, the offset cost per order will probably go up a little bit as well. How did you guys think about this? We'll start with you, Michael. How did you guys think about this as a company? And hey, are we willing to, utilize a solution like Pachama? It's going to eat directly into our margins.
To be honest, it wasn't even much of a conversation. It was sort of a no-brainer, to move forward. And I think that just needs to be the mindset to actually make it happen. When you look at it from a profit perspective, you'll more than often take a step back, and that's just how corporations run. But if we make it a must, I think that'll just be it moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree. It was a no-brainer. So it's
that's really why isn't everyone doing this?
Yeah,
really?
exactly.
It's not.
Well, I love those answers. That's what I was expecting to hear, but it's great to hear from you all as well, where yes, there is a cost, but it should be a no-brainer. You should be baking this into your business as is. And again, that was part of our thinking as well to introduce it internally too. So, it's great to see you all, leading by example and pushing us forward.
And I think as well, the consumers are more environmentally aware now than ever before, and I think it will just continue on. So by doing this, at least you are being more competitive in the future and getting just more sales. So it will always be more beneficial to do this, I think, in the end. So.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And I want to jump into that side as well. We'll get some good marketing and sales stuff before we wrap it up. It's crazy. We're almost at the top of the hour. But a quick question for you, David. Why focus on trees?
Why trees?
Why trees? Why forests? Where was that in your approach? I'm sure there's other avenues you guys could have explored. Why was that where you wanted to focus so much of your effort to start?
Yeah, we are a little over 2 years old, so I think our mission is to, as I stated, is to restore nature. So eventually there are other types of mechanisms that we want to address, blue carbon being kind of the obvious next step, sea kelp, mangrove restoration. There's a lot of great work being done by other companies in soil as well. We started with trees, primarily kind of this Venn diagram between trees are already have the ability, right, to sequester significant amounts of carbon. They are one of the most efficient and cost-effective, ergo scalable mechanisms, right, to really start ramping up, whether that's tree planting or figuring out ways how to conserve more trees that are already sequestering significant amounts of carbon, right? They're already such an efficient carbon sequestration technology on their own, right? That it's nature's carbon sequestration technology. And on the other side of this, right, it was kind of like, where were these gaps in the market in terms of a technology standpoint that we could address, right, and build stuff using advancements both in remote sensing, the satellite imaging resolution over the last 5 to 10 years. It's like every year it's just exponentially getting better, as well as advancements in artificial intelligence and machine learning, right, that enables us to create different models both for measuring the biomass, but also for detecting deforestation events. So it was really kind of this confluence of wanting to focus on nature, what is scalable, and what new technologies we could kind of parlay. And so that's what led us to focus on forests as a first step. But yeah, eventually we do, it is in our hearts to be able to do more than, our mission's not to restore forests, it's to restore nature. So.
Yeah.
Perfect. And let's see, here's a question that just came in from Alan. Is there an analysis element that helps users determine if certain shifts in their current operational model could lower impact and offset demands? So I guess maybe we'll go to Signy and Fanar. Like, as you guys think through how you approach the entire supply chain, I guess how do you analyze how your operations or supply chain is functioning, and maybe shifts that you can do to reduce the impact?
Well, actually, this is a very interesting question because, as Fanar has been explaining, our focus is to go more into like minimalism with everything we do and with all our new products. And this is what actually is called skin minimalism. I don't know if you heard about that, but that's what it means actually. It is to offer the high quality and potent products with that help the customer also to simplify their own skincare routine. And that's what we are introducing to our customers, to minimize all packaging as much as we can, skip all inserts and everything, and that's very important as well. And with we have them customer certified by EcoCert as well, and also by just simplifying your own skincare routine, you are doing your own good in order to lessen their own personal waste, because it's a lot of consumption, and it's very important that you have your own impact. So this is where we are also contributing for a sustainable future. So it's all linked together. So it's
Great.
I don't know if it's answered your question.
Yeah, it does. That's great. Thank you. So I have, I think, 2 more questions left. Michael, we'll start with you first. I have to ask from, you're running a business also at the end of the day. So from a capitalist perspective, how do you go about utilizing your approach to nature or sustainability or carbon neutrality, maybe in your marketing or sales or product development and on your website? How do you guys approach that?
I think this was more of a focus for the rebranding. Like both those efforts don't really play out in our marketing whatsoever now. We are looking at other brands like Tentree, for example, does an amazing job of showing you accountability on your purchases and showing you the process of the tree. And we love that whole process. They actually offer you a tag to show you the tree that they're planting. I'm not sure how it correlates to what David was saying of the whole tree planting side. But we are looking at efforts of how other companies are putting a focus on this. We do want to share it as much as can, but I think it's going to be a question of, we spoke to No Issue that you guys referred for, our shipping packaging, so our compostable mailers. I think one of our favorite things about that company is that they write it in real big, that this is a compostable mailer. And again, that's from a question of awareness. I would almost write on it, this is not garbage, stop throwing things out and recycle it. So by saying this is a compostable mailer, that was a good first step. And then for our packaging, we do want to share maybe the offsets and the rest. Of course, we are entertaining how we're going to incorporate those 3 pillars into our future brand.
Yeah. Okay, Casey, as a quick plug here as well, that's our core competency and focus. The technology we're developing really is on the remote sensing, but more and more we're starting to put resources into the storytelling component as well. So all of the ShipBob customers that purchase offsets for shipping through the ShipBob API, once they purchase, we'll get a Pachama landing page that will highlight the amount that they're offsetting and which projects are being supported. Those will link to the project pages so that you're Herbally and Blue Lagoon stakeholders, their customers can go, to us, it's not just good enough to say, hey, this is carbon neutral shipping, We want to be able to help our customer stakeholders, better understand, everything we've talked about on this call, What is the difference between reforestation and avoided deforestation, And why is each project important, and what are these benefits beyond just carbon? In the same way, and I agree, Tentree does a wonderful job, We're baking that into our product as well, So how we can educate users on what is happening in the projects that our customers are supporting.
Nice, thanks for that. And I feel like we kind of buried the lead where it's if you're running your site already, at least to get it, let's say, set up with Pachama, it's not that it doesn't take that much time, and from a cost perspective, it's not overly impactful, and you are doing good, and it does not impact the customer experience. And so, like you have both mentioned, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And so hopefully a lot more brands, and as we continue to promote the Pachama integration as well, see this as such a no-brainer. So again, so Signe and Fanar, what about from you all, from a positioning perspective and showcasing this, especially I think with the younger demographics, or maybe people in certain geographies, they hold this as so important to them. So how do you guys approach that and kind of showcasing what you're doing while also kind of being proud about it behind the scenes?
Well, actually, we talk a lot, of course, about sustainability, and we have it quite visible on our new website, what we are doing and where we come from. But as I mentioned before, we are just recently started with Pachama, and we will continue, talk about it and make a special landing page where we, introduce the cooperation. And of course, it needs to be transparent before we actually talk about it. You need to be, as a consumer, you want to see where everything comes from, if it's legit and all that. So it's incredibly important that it's very transparent.
And we see it as well in the company because, the younger employees that are coming to Blue Lagoon, they are more and more invested into the environment.
Absolutely.
And if we want to get the best employees in the future, we have to do our best to preserve the environment. So in that aspect, it's important for the internally for the company and externally as well. So
I love that. We actually saw that a ton over here. Oh, sorry, go for it.
It's sort of in our culture,
Yeah.
I was gonna say that. I think that's one of the biggest benefits. I think is that there's a culture shift, and in some countries, or maybe not even a shift. They've been like that for centuries, and that's what needs to happen, sort of globally. For these shifts to happen, is that they're thinking about this before even starting the company. It's ingrained in the fabric of what's going to be our supply chain and where's it going to come from and all these things, which are questions that maybe here often arise later on, down the road. And I think that's an important shift, especially that it's good for marketing, but at the same time, there's a lot of clashes with marketing where, bigger package sizes might not be as beautiful, or bigger, or the nicest, shiniest materials might not be, the most sustainables. But when it comes from a culture ingrained, then those things don't matter anymore. It's marketing and sustainability are tied together.
And it becomes a luxury when it's, very, sustainable in all ways.
Yes, definitely.
My hope is that it's both a combination of brands like yourselves that are taking it on their end, but also consumers that are driving that behavior and supporting brands. The analogy I like to give is, case here in California, 10 years ago, if you went to a Safeway or Pavilions market, right, the organic produce section was like not even 10%, right? It was like afterthought in the market. And they started losing market share to Whole Foods and Trader Joe's. And now if you go into the market, right, it's like a third of it. And is that because Safeway itself really cares? I don't know. But consumer behavior started driving them to kind of think that way. So I think I don't know, again, it's the chicken or the egg, what comes first, but my hope is that it's both brands like you're starting, as Michael said, from like thinking about this from day one. And we get brands all the time that reach out to us and like they haven't even launched yet. Also, it's going to be a big part on the consumers as well, right, to reward brands for taking that into account.
Agreed. And I'm glad you guys mentioned the company aspect, because I don't know if any announcement got more applause as far as I can remember at ShipBob than when we announced this initiative with Pachama. And so I think it's, it's of course happiness internally, it's employee retention, it's attracting, a different type of employee or colleague as well. So we're already at the top of the hour. I have to ask my last question. We'll do rapid fire, so we'll try to keep them quick. What is your number one piece of advice for entrepreneurs or brand owners today? So Signe, we'll start with you.
Well, number one, you mean just for new brands, so introducing new brands or products, and just be have all certifications in place, just to know what you're doing, read the market, understand its needs. So that's one of the core. Know where you're coming from. So it's You want to add something?
Yeah, look into your sustainability, how your environmental performance is, and try to do better. Just increase your performance.
Yeah. That's what we always do in product development. We always try to do it better every day.
Thank you, David. What's your number one piece of advice?
Yeah, sustainability is not a race. There's no start point and finish line. It's a journey. Figure out ways. Right, it's overwhelming when you're just starting out. Figure out ways to start small. Right, as a conversation. Right, you don't necessarily need to make your whole company carbon neutral, but start with shipping. Start with air travel. Right, start with, and it doesn't have to necessarily be offsets. Right, but start with small things. Start incorporating that, and keep evolving. Keep looking at different angles and ways that you can incorporate it into different aspects of your business.
Thank you. And last but not least, Michael.
Right. I mean, I'm gonna second both those, but basically, definitely, be genuine in your product, be genuine in what you're building. If you have a real passion for it, it's gonna work. And I think just like any aspect of your business, just do it, and you're gonna optimize over time. And just make sure that sustainability is as big of a pillar as every other department in your business, and it'll also optimize over time.
Perfect. Well, thank you all for taking an hour out of your day to join us. Thanks to everybody in the audience for, again, taking time as well. we'll be here next Wednesday. As always, we've got a great guest with the team over at Your Super. We're really excited for them to share their story and how they've been able to grow so successfully. And again, if you're in your ShipBob dashboard, just find, go to the App Store, find Pachama. It's as easy as a few clicks. Please come check it out. And yes, thank you, everybody. Take care.
Nice meeting you all. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Take care.
Bye.
Take care.